It is a huge honor today to be sitting in the podcast studio with David Wiener, and my son Ryan is here podcasting today. Say hi, Ryan. Hey, he's behind the camera. You got to get in front of the camera, Ryan, somehow. Come on over here, Ryan. Ryan started the show for Dad. He when he finished college, he was home for a week. Thanks, buddy. He was home for a week, and he saw me struggling on my podcast, and he said, "Dad, you're not very sharp in the head, and let me help you." And so he did. How many did you do, Ryan? The first, or he did 1,000 shows, and then he let me down. Like I couldn't believe it. He left me for some gorgeous girl. I mean, I never saw that coming when he was growing up. I never thought someday he's going to leave me for a gorgeous woman. And he made me a grandkid named Jasper. And it's all mine. He gave it to me, and but I let him raise it. I let him pretend that it's his kid. But hey, we're here with David Wiener, and it's kind of a an ironic show because he's the CEO of Cash Flow Strategies, and I don't have one listener today that even knows what cash flow is. Their accountant only gives them a P&L, and it's only made for a third-party IRS tax collector. They only get a balance sheet when they're going to get a loan or a divorce. And a statement of cash flow. I've never walked into a dental office and the dentist could show me that he's had a statement of cash flow.
Because they don't know what cash flow is. That's why I have a job.
Yeah. But I feel sorry for your job because I know my homies, they want to learn how to do a better root canal. They want to know how to bone graft. They don't even know that they should know about cash flow. So David Wiener, known as Mr. Cash Flow, is the founder and CEO of Cash Flow Strategies, Inc., and is a fellow of American College of Healthcare Trustees. David is recognized authority in improving cash flow and has been cited locally and nationally in print, radio, and television. David has been involved in the business of medicine and dentistry for almost 35 years, a former practice administrator, COO of a medical billing company, trainer and practice management consultant. David understands the difficulties of managing the cash flow of medical and dental practices and facility. He conducts webinars and speaks regularly across the country at CPA conferences, business seminars, dental conferences. He addresses the changing world of business cash flow, regulatory compliance, medical and dental receivables, and how practice can adapt to new realities when protecting their cash flow and bottom line profits. Beginning with dental practices and facilities, the idea for cash flow strategies grew out of a passion for helping business people understand the changing times and maximize their cash flow and profits. It is his passion and a true labor of love. So this is going to be a great show. So I just want to say to the kids real quick that what cash flow means is, so when you look at bankruptcies, when you look at personal bankruptcies in the United States, 40 to 60,000 of them a year are for healthcare. When you look at businesses, the top reasons of what I believe are bankruptcies, from getting my MBA at ASU, the number one reason for going bankruptcy was cash flow. And what that means is, let's say you have a business where all your bills cost you $1 a month and you do this job and it's very successful and they paid you $1, but they're not going to give it to you for 90 days. So now you need $3 in your savings account. You need to pay January, February, and March because you're going to get this money at the end of 90 days, but you don't have $3 in your savings account. So you're a profitable business on paper, on your P&L, everything's fine, but you went bankrupt because you ran out of cash. And now we're seeing this in China massively because as they've quarantined cities and nobody's going to the restaurant, they think after the first 60 days, 1/3 of all the businesses will be bankrupt, whether they were interviewing in Bloomberg someone who has a big car lot that's selling really nice luxury cars, but they don't have the savings account to pay all their bills for 2 months waiting for this business to pop back up. And then the number two reason is the, after cash flow, was the Mack truck syndrome. And the Mack truck syndrome is, every single person on your team has to be able to be ran over and killed by a Mack truck. So what happens, you'll see a lot of businesses that have like 25 employees or less. They do $1 million a year. Everything's fine. But you have 5 guys in the back welding parts for, say, a baler for a tractor. And you got the owner and you got everybody's been fine, but you got one sales guy. You got one guy in a 3-piece suit and tie who knows the business, been in it 20, 30 years and sells $1 million worth a year, and he gets ran over by a Mack truck. So then you hire Anthony. And Anthony Wiener, it's a play on your name. And what was his Twitter name?
Carlos Danger.
Yeah, so you hire Carlos Danger. Is he your brother or your cousin?
No relation.
No
thankfully.
relation. Okay, yeah, right. And so you hire Carlos Dangers, and he is a great guy, and he does like $750,000 his first year, which is he knocks out of the ballpark. But you had to do $800,000 to pay the bills. So again, you went bankrupt. So that's why in my office I've always had an associate dentist. So that it's, something wrong with one dentist, we don't shut down. Here at Dentaltown, I don't have one programmer, I have 5. And you always want redundancy. I don't have one bookkeeper, Stacy. I have a backup. So, and then the greatest companies, the founder like Ray Kroc can die. And McDonald's doesn't blink. They still get up and make a 2 all-beef patty, special sauce, cheeseless, and onion on seed bun. That sounds really good, Ryan. Can you go in and get some Big Macs? So thank you so much for coming down to the office. So what made you want to teach people about cash flow? Nobody wants to know about cash flow.
They don't want to know about it. They just want to have it.
Oh, yeah.
So it came out of a consulting business that I was doing, consulting practice. I started hearing from my doctors and dentists, I'm working as hard as I can work. I'm seeing as many patients as I can see. I'm not making money anymore. What do I do? When I dug in a little bit to that and started looking at what was really going on, it wasn't a matter of revenue. Their revenue was okay. It was a matter of cash flow. So productive dental practice, medical practice, but they couldn't make payroll. They couldn't pay their bills. And so I started to dive in a little bit to where are the areas that actually get them stuck. And I knew a lot of people. I work with a lot of people who consult with medical and dental practices. So for a while, I would just say, well, here's a problem that I see you have. Why don't you call so-and-so and they can help you? Here's another thing, call this person. I knew a lot of people who did a lot of things. The next time I would meet with the doctor, I would say, so did you call these people I told you about? And they'd say, well, no, I tried, but I never got a hold of them. And then they'd continue to complain about not having any money. So after a while of that, I thought, you know what? They actually talk to me. So why don't I just become all of these people? So I took a couple of years and I started vetting some of the best companies in the country that provide those services and wound up affiliating myself with probably 8 or 9 of them so that now I can walk into a practice in 30 to 40 minutes of just talking with the doctor and the office manager. I can see where their sticking points are, but then I can also help them get the services they need to improve their cash flow.
Which is what a businessman should be, a conductor. I have my back. You should have your back to the customers. And if you need a drummer, well, you don't have time to go out and learn the drums because you're going to need a bass guitar, an electric guitar, and a clarinet and a piano. So you're a conductor. So you have all the instruments available.
And I can orchestrate.
Yeah, just like a dentist, we work with 10 specialists. There's 10 specialties in dentistry. You're not going to do all that stuff.
And the idea is you do what you do best.
Eating.
Fixing teeth.
Oh, okay.
And let me work with you and take care of all the rest of the things for you so that I'm a big believer in business process outsourcing. If it's not your specialty area, it's not what you're really good at, there's probably a way that you can get it done better, cheaper, faster. There's a lot of hesitation for people to go outside. They trust what they've always done.
So let's start first. What generates the phone call? Why would a dentist be calling you? What made him call you in the first place?
Either they read an article that I wrote, or they hear me speak somewhere, or they get referrals from other dentists.
But what's the problem, though?
Just they're not sure what their cash flow is like. They're They're not making the kind of money that they want to be making.
So they just feel like I'm working really hard.
Yeah.
And I don't.
And
seem to
my
have any money.
consultations don't cost anything. So, that's always a big issue.
Okay, and how do they get a free consultation?
They just give me a call or shoot me a message on my email.
What is it? I mean, you're going to give it out right now?
Yeah. They can call me. My toll-free number anywhere in the country is 888-780-1333.
Okay, say that again. 888.
780.
Okay, 780.
1333. That'll get right to me.
That'll get right to you. Okay.
Or they can go on my website, cashflowstrategies.us. And there's a response form. I get these messages all the time. Give me a call. I'd like to talk.
Okay.
That's all it really takes. And then
that 800, they can text you on that 888?
No, they can call.
They can call.
If they want to text, they can call they can text to 770-367-8091.
Ryan, do you know why you're my favorite son out of all four? Because Ryan, if you call him, he answers the phone. The other three boys deny the call and then text SUP, SUP. So Ryan, why is that? So that's really good. It just is a behavior. And that's another thing that we notice on website conversions that, the average dental website, 100 people have to land before 3 convert and call. But you put that little text box up, which I think it'd just be stupid and annoying. But it doesn't matter. I'm not going to project myself on the market, but it doubles. Another 3% will start doing that little text box. And the ones who know it the most, who advertise the most, are orthodontists, because their average new patient is 6,500, where a dentist is going to be a fraction of that. In fact, a dentist won't capture the money from what an orthodontist does. It takes 5 years. The orthodontist will capture it in 2 years for the treatment.
And part of the problem that an orthodontist has is almost every patient is on a payment plan. And when a patient is on a payment plan, very often they will make a few payments and then stop. So what we need is a better way to make sure they get paid. And there's a number of different ways of doing that, and it kind of depends on the individual orthodontist and the direction he wants to go in. But we can do guaranteed payment plans. We can do reminder service. We can do all kinds of different things that help them collect on that. And dental practices have it too, but a lot of the dental practices hesitate to do payment plans because they're really, really tough to manage on your own.
That is why I was really excited about yesterday Intuit to acquire Credit Karma, because my theme, if I've had any theme on my public speaking in dentistry, it was all the way back to the beginning with the 30-day dental MBA, because all my friends, I was crushing it, and all my friends didn't even know if they were crushing it or not, because they had all their information in their Dentrix computer and then all their accounting in QuickBooks. And here it is 32 years later, and now we have one dental software, Open Dental, that's open, so any of your programmers can just program to it. And Quicken is finally become and they've gone from a baby consumer, something that for the individual, to now a serious small business operation.
Oh yeah.
And now that they're buying a CareStack for $7 billion. So my dream, because like on a patient payment plan, like my homies, they're on Open Dental. If they were going to extend David Wiener a deal, they would say, okay, well, you can make payments to this, but they don't have the sophistication to run a banking check or a credit check and to sit there and say, no, in fact, this would be, not a wise decision. So I think 5 or 10 years from now, a lot of these problems you're dealing with today may be solved by better infrastructure.
Could be. It's still, if you're managing a payment plan all on your own, you still have to wonder, what do I do when the patient stops paying? Because they do, and they do often. There are services out there that can white label a payment plan for the practice and guarantee that you receive every payment.
Okay, so I'm gonna start going over some of your posts. I'm a big fan of your posts on Dentaltown. Thank you much for sharing. So a guy puts in accounts receivable, says, "I am a small office owner with need for a collection agency in Michigan. With my research, including discussion, blah 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 blah." And then you reply, Trans World Systems Inc. (TSI) is the largest collector of dental debt in the U.S. and is the preferred vendor for the Michigan Dental Association. They can start as early as 30 days and do outsource follow. So do you want? Let's start with accounts receivables. What would account receivables have to do with cash flow?
Well, everything. The AR is probably the largest asset that doctor owns.
More than his house or his dental practice? Yep. Wow.
Yeah. And in a lot of cases, I can't tell you, the phrases that I hear over and over again are, boy, they never teach you that in dental school. I probably hear that,
which is lame,
4 or 5 times a week.
Which is lame because they're not going to teach it in plumbing school, electrical school. You go to welding school. You go learn how to drive a semi truck. Excuse me, we're going to stop welding right now.
They're busy learning what they need to learn to be a dentist, and what they don't teach is how to run a dental practice, which I think everybody comes out of dental school assuming that they can figure that out, and they don't. So the accounts receivable is huge. And if your accounts receivable, the older an accounts receivable gets, the faster it depreciates. I would, in fact, quote a study by the U.S. Commerce Department all the time to my clients. If you wait 6 months to collect a debt, it's less than 30% collectible.
Yeah.
And people say, well, I don't know why my collection agency isn't doing a good job. I send stuff to them at 120 days, 180 days. That's one of the reasons right there. And so we can look at their accounts receivable, take care of the payment plans for them, and also get them into a process where they don't realize every time you send out a statement, a letter, a phone call, candy, flowers, whatever you're doing to a patient who owes you money, it costs the practice between $10 and $12 every single contact.
To generate a statement.
To generate a statement, letter, phone call, whatever.
Labor.
So if somebody is 4 or 5 months out and your balances for a general and cosmetic dentist aren't that high for patients, you've probably spent the value of the account, at least your profit margin. It doesn't make sense. So there are ways to collect faster, better, cheaper, without tying up your staff. And
which is illegal, by the way, I found out.
What's that? Tying up your staff?
Yeah.
Did you try it?
Yeah, and it turned out that is indeed illegal. But I'm gonna beat this in the ground for my homies because number one, they come in your office, they're in pain, they want out of your pain, and you're gonna do a root canal, and you're gonna go through all the time and labor of billing the insurance companies, which is about 30% of the U.S. healthcare cost because Delta can't automate it on an app, and you have to have a human call them, and they just can't do anything that should be obvious. And then you say to that patient, okay, now your portion is $300. How would you like to pay for that today? Well, he's the most motivated right now. I'm in pain. I'm missing work. This is $1,000 procedure, and you're going to do a lot of work to help to get the insurance paid, which is the benefit that my employer paid for. Your portion not due today. And he says, just send me a bill. What? I mean, you can't do that at a mall. You can't do that at a restaurant. You can't do that anywhere. So you go to McDonald's, you order a hamburger, you pay $3, and then you get the hamburger. And the person doing it's 16. Then I go to your office, you're 26. I order a hamburger. You give me the hamburger. I eat it. And as I'm walking out the door, you say, hey, I'll send you a bill. And so now look at this. So now it gets even worse. So you have 3 fingers. You have 2 of the fingers are overhead. The ADA shows every year, great studies, that average overhead is 65%. So you make 1/3% yourself. So you don't collect this guy's $3. That means that to get your $3, that's going to be the profit from the next 2 patients that come in that give you $1. So not only when you don't collect on that, so your collection policy in my opinion, is the highest effect on overhead. Well, it'd be that or labor. Some people have like high labor, but they collect all their money, and
Sure.
they have good cash flow, and they make $250 a year. But man, when you have high labor and then a over 30, 60, 90, the overhead's through the roof.
A couple of the things that I speak about when I speak around the country to medical practices, dental practices, and organizations, two of the most requested things that I talk about as a part of my talk are how to build an effective, compliant financial policy. And we go through a little workshop.
That's a lot of words. What? Say that again. How to
build an effective, compliant patient financial policy. You hand somebody a document when they first come in.
Financial
policy.
So
patient comes in, new patient, you hand them a form. They're supposed to read it, understand it, and sign it. Even if they do, well, most of them don't read it, but even if they do, you're expected to enforce it. I find so many practices that are using patient financial policy forms that either they took from somebody and they don't understand it, or it's the same one they've been using for the last 20 years. It's not compliant with the law anymore. It's totally non-effective, and they don't enforce it anyway. And to be honest, the person who is the biggest culprit in not enforcing the financial policy is the doctor. Because dentists are softies, and that guy comes in pain, and a lot of the doctors will say to them, "Don't worry about how you're going to pay for it. We'll make sure that you."
I know,
and
that's why I love
God
my
love
homies.
them.
I know, and that's why I love them. Ryan, remember when we were in Mexico on that charity dentistry, missionary dentistry thing, and I mean we kept talking about how isn't dentistry so cool because the dental students were just so, I mean, they're cool.
Yeah.
And they're very different than some other professions. I don't want to mention my name because then my lawyer friends are going to give me a bunch of shit, but dentistry, healthcare, physicians, dentists are an entirely different breed than the people attracted to law, I believe.
And that's why I love to work with them.
Yeah.
I've worked with doctors my entire life. My father was a CPA who only worked for medical and dental groups. I've been around them. I speak doctor.
Who is more boring, a dentist or a CPA?
You know what? I have found neither.
Neither are boring?
Neither are boring. I've had the opportunity to speak at the annual meeting of the Academy of Dental CPAs a couple of times out in San Diego and in Kansas City. And my first thought was, this is going to be fun. What an incredible group of people. All CPAs, all deal with dental practices in a large way. Tremendous people. And I like hanging out with doctors anyway. So
and a couple of things I want to tell you. One of the biases that dentists have is if you're really, really smart, because dentists are used to their whole grammar school, everybody's telling them how smart they are, because they're crushing it in geometry and trig and algebra and calculus and Newton and all that stuff. So you're one of your biggest clinical heroes, Palo Malo, who we had on the show, who invented the all-on-4 and was a gazillionaire. I mean, he's probably the richest dentist that ever came out of Portugal, possibly Europe. And but he decided on these expensive treatments that he was going to start carrying the paper. So what happened to him? He got up to $7.4 million in debt. And the newspaper published a list of 88 creditors claiming around 94 million euros. And he becayed. There he is. There's his clinic, bankrupt. And that was, I mean, so you can be the smartest surgeon, the smartest guy in implants, invent the all-on-4, and be the richest guy on the block, but he didn't understand extending credit.
The business.
Now he basically in his mind said, what is this Chase Bank of America bullshit? I'm a dentist. I mean, what could Chase know that a dentist doesn't know? Could they know anything?
I think maybe they do.
Yeah, and maybe it's a sovereign profession. So this trans world. So on account receivables, you said so first of all, Trans World Airlines is one, or Trans World Airlines. I'm thinking of TWA. So talk about this. What is it?
Trans World Systems.
Trans World Systems. So how are they? How are they the largest? You said is the largest collector of dental debt in the U.S. I did not know that. So tell us more about that.
Well, they don't advertise, but back in 1970, a couple of guys who were looking to start a collection agency realized that by law, the first contact that a collection agency has to make with the debtor is by mail.
Okay.
It's federal regulation.
And the scammers always think that they're calling you on the phone. And
well, they do that too, but they said, if we know we have to use the mail and we know that our costs are fixed, why do we have to charge them a percentage of what we collect? Why couldn't we just charge them a simple fixed fee? It'll be cheaper for our clients. Everybody's happy. We're not sure it'll work, but let's give it a shot. And they invented the concept of fixed fee collections back in 1970.
Fixed fee collections.
Right. So typically, when a dental practice works an account for as long as they can possibly work it in-house, wastes all their money chasing the money, and they throw their hands up in the air and they say, you know what, we're just not going to get this. Often they will turn to a traditional percentage-based collection agency and turn over the debt. And if that money's collected, they wind up paying 30%, 40%, 50% of, well, you've already spent a lot of money chasing it yourself. The kind of the dirty little secret of collections is that 85 to 90% of the money that's collected by a collection agency in the United States is collected on the very first contact. Because there's a group of people, pretty good sized group of people, who are simply waiting to make sure you're serious about collecting the money. And once they hear from a third party and know that a third party's involved, they'll pay it. So these guys decided to invent the concept of fixed fee collections. So you pay a fixed fee to turn an account over. It averages now around $12, no matter what your balance is.
For Trans World Systems.
Right. They utilize the mail at first, maybe some phone calls. If the money's collected, you keep 100% of it. Way less expensive. They're also far more efficient and effective than any other collection agency in the United States. Now, they don't just do medical and dental, but that's the world that I live in, so I'm more familiar with that. They're the preferred vendor for a whole slew. I know where I live in Georgia, they're the preferred vendor for the Georgia Dental Association. Like you said, I mentioned to someone that they're the preferred vendor for the Michigan Dental Association. And there's a whole bunch more state dental associations that have chosen them as the preferred vendor. They are also the preferred vendor for the American Association of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons. And I've been
You do a lot of work with Amos, don't you?
I do a lot of work with Amos.
So what are oral surgeons? Are they doing the Palo Malo? Or are they financing the big implant cases? Or is this?
They're billing. A lot of them have to file both medical and dental insurance, which takes forever. Trans World Systems also offers a service to speed up slow pay insurance claims for a fixed fee that averages like $12, because nobody's going to pay a collection agency 30% to speed up a dental claim. But if the insurance company is not responding to you, you can actually turn the insurance company over to the collection agency for that fixed fee, and they have a whole separate service where they'll contact them a number of times and speed up that claim for you. Now, it may result in a denial, but that's okay. If you get a denial, then you know it's patient responsibility and you can go from there. Since the time that Trans World Systems was founded, they've also added a layer of first-party follow-up. And so we can actually start, Trans World can start the day the EOB clears.
You got to explain EOB to my homies.
The explanation of benefits that comes from the insurance company If there's a patient balance left over, typically most of my clients that are using Transworld systems, they'll send one statement after the explanation of benefits comes just to establish the patient responsibility. 30 days later, they start with Transworld systems for a fixed fee. They can do the first party follow-up, the pre-collections, and full collections.
Yeah, so many things we can talk about on this. Thanks for coming in and doing this. When you have cash flow problems, the first thing that we started talking about was accounts receivables. And we talked about it's coming back. It's funny how you look at progress, it's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I mean, always. I thought this dog was slayed 30 years ago about carrying your own paper. And now it's making a comeback. And what do I see the similarities? Well, when the market's all going up. I mean, from 94 to 2000, what percent of your friends thought they were a genius stock picker?
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody. And then March of 2000, they all realized maybe I should do root canals for a living. And now this bull market's been going it's been going a decade. And in the last couple of years, you start seeing these things. And Barron's is funny. This morning, Barron's had an article on, it also correlates the amount of Ponzi schemes. So right now, the FBI is tracking like 30 major Ponzi schemes, and they always pop up at the tops of the market because you're so, what did Greenspan call it? The euphoria, irrational exuberance. You're so irrationally exuberant, optimistic that you can't just smell baloney and say that's a Ponzi scheme. So everybody kind of gets caught up in the excitement. And I think that coronavirus might be throwing a little water on this.
Yeah, I think so.
The end of the 10-year market.
Yesterday it did anyway.
Yeah, it dropped 1,000 yesterday. But again, I think that it comes down to cash flow. So give them some metrics. What is a healthy cash flow? Like on account receivables, if your dental office produces and collects $1 a month, $12 a year, what would be a healthy amount of over 30, 60, 90, 120? And due to the coronavirus in China where they're shut down for a month and don't have any savings, what should be the healthy cash flow savings?
Well, in looking at somebody's their accounts receivable, when I was doing traditional consulting with the dental practices, and I don't do any clinical, I just do the business end of the practice, but I would look at their aging report, and if they were reducing 50% between buckets, so 60 days is 50% less than 30 days, 90 days is 50% less than 60 days, and they were doing it on their own, they're doing a pretty good job.
So Ryan, what's the formula for that? Reducing your receivables 50% every month going forward.
What's the formula for reducing it every month?
Yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be a fractal. What would that be in algebra? You can work on that. I'm just trying to give you a problem to work on.
When I was first introduced to Transworld systems about 12 years ago, I'm looking at their percentages saying, okay, in dentistry alone, in the first 30 days that they have the account, if the account comes to them at 30 days, in the first 30 days, they're seeing over 82% of them collected. Depending on the specialty, in the next 60 days, they're seeing between 40 and 55% of what's left collected. That's before anything has to go to full collections, which is exactly what you want. You want it done while you still have a relationship with the patient that can be salvaged. You're not dismissing the patient at this point, but you're getting your money within the first 90 days, which is crucial. So I look more at not as necessarily what's a healthy cash flow or what's a healthy collection percentage. I look at where you are now and how do we improve it, and can we consistently improve it year to year.
So a lot of people wonder, if I'm really, really busy and I'm not making any money, is my girl up front, Shirley, stealing money?
In some cases, yeah.
Is that what would be more likely? Bad collection policy, theft?
Another thing that I speak on when I speak a lot is on how to speak to patients about money. I've heard some of the craziest things, and not only like HIPAA violations, just not good ways of saying things. And there's certain ways to phrase things where you're going to be a lot more likely, one, not to take the patient off, and two, to collect more money rather than less at the time of service.
Well, let's do some scenarios. You're the doctor. I'm here for my hair transplants.
It's simple things. Patient says, I can't pay all of this today. Often I hear them say, well, how much can you pay? That's the wrong thing to say because what you're doing is you're giving them control back, and you know what they're going to say. I got $10 in my wallet, So rather than saying that, what you want to say is, how short are you? Because now you're giving the expectation to them that you intend to collect it all. You want to see, exactly what they can pay, expecting that they're going to pay the bulk of it today. Or somebody says, I need to make payments on this if you can. You don't want to say, well, how much can you pay a month? Because again, you know what you're going to hear. I could send you $5 a month. And so you want to say what I did in the practice that I helped run and what I encourage my clients to say is, will that take you 60 or 90 days to get that paid? And if they said it would take more than 3 payments or 90 days, my response was, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Now, we've also developed new services where you can make payment plans where you're guaranteed to receive the payments without paying a ridiculous interest rate. And I'm not going to mention any names. There are outside financing companies that charge the doctor ridiculous discount rates and interest rates on that. You can actually do a guaranteed payment plan that only costs the practice 3%, which is what you're going to pay to run a credit card anyway. And you're guaranteed to receive every payment. In that case, make it 6 months if you need to. Make it 8 months if you need to.
And who's that going to be with?
That's with a company called Verity.
Verity.
Varidi.
Varidi. IDI.
Another company that I'm affiliated with. So if you want to use Verity's service or you want to get a demo, call me. I'll help you get it taken care of as quickly as possible. But they will allow you to set up a payment plan as your own, because really a patient would much rather work with the practice on this than they would be willing to go to an outside financing company. And we all know who those are.
And those are Care Credit you're talking about.
Care Credit, and there's others.
But is Care Credit I'm having a hard time putting my mind around Care Credit, because my first 20, 30 years, GE was the biggest company. Jack Welch was the biggest celebrity, and they owned Care Credit, and then they just fell off a cliff. Unexpected. So are they the 400-pound gorilla they once were, or...
Everybody uses Care Credit. I mean,
it's been sold. It's no longer owned by GE.
Almost everybody I know uses Care Credit. And I have a lot of friends at Care Credit that I don't want to tick off at this juncture, but Care Credit rejects 50% of the people who apply. Care Credit also charges a pretty hefty interest rate to the practice.
What is it?
It varies depending on the practice. I've seen it as high as 11 or 12%. They also... And
is that because of that dentist or that dentist patient? Is it different for each loan?
It's
or
both.
Is it more...
I'm not absolutely sure of.
I'm sure there's a lot of algorithms.
Yeah, and also, they offer to the patient, if you pay in 6 months or if you pay in a year, it'll be interest free. I would love to see stats on how many people actually pay during the interest free period. And I've got to say, I use Care Credit. But the way I use Care Credit is so that I don't ever have to talk with money about my doctor, my dentist. They put it on Care Credit. I pay it the next day when I'm home and sitting at my desk. And so I never pay any interest. And they're happy to do it. But this Verity service, they'll guarantee acceptance for anybody under $1,500 automatically. If the balance is over $1,500, then they're going to have to run some credit. They guarantee that you will receive all of the payments, even if the patient stops paying, and they only charge the practice 3%. Crazy. And we've seen.
So why do you think it's not a bigger thing? Why do you think more dentists? Why does everybody know about Care Credit and not this Verity?
Care Credit has done incredible amounts of marketing. They're at every conference I'm ever at with a big booth and a big display. And, they just because somebody's the biggest doesn't necessarily mean they're the best. And I think there are cases where Care Credit works great for people, but in my estimation, this works better. Now, I have a doctor that I work with who is a huge Care Credit fan. Okay, good. It works for you. You're happy with it. That's wonderful. What do you do with the 50% of the patients that they don't accept?
And maybe they're not maybe that doctor's not experiencing. Maybe they're in a more affluent area than another doctor.
They're not actually. But he started using Verity just for the cases that Care Credit doesn't accept and is very happy with it. That's great. I'm happy. As long as they're happy and their cash flow's better, I'm fine. And so that's helped out a lot. And one of the ways that I found out about Verity is because they're actually using Transworld Systems to collect from the patients who don't pay them. So not my client. I wish they were, but they're not. But I've worked with Verity now for a few years, and
that's Roger Gerard.
I haven't dealt with Roger particularly, but yeah,
that's the CEO.
But it's worked out great for my clients, and I think it's, if nothing else, it's worth looking into. And they do a 20-minute web demo for anybody who's interested in it, and they'll show you the actual numbers and everything. It's well worth doing.
Someone was asking you, what did you think of treating AR with Denefits? Have you heard of that company, Denefits?
Not familiar with it. No.
Not familiar. So then another thread, good book on running practices, and you said highly recommend the E-Myth Dentist: Why Most Practices Don't Work and What to Do About It by Michael Gerber.
I'm an E-Myth fan. I believe in what he's talking about. I read the E-Myth years and years and years ago, and then read the E-Myth Revisited, and I found out he's done all kinds of specialized books. And so I've read the E-Myth Physician. I've read the E-Myth Dentist. It's just good. He covers all kinds of areas of your practice and where your sticking points are and what you can do about it and that sort of thing. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, that is a hell of a book. So to the kids though, a fourth of my listeners still in dental school. Can you succinctly describe what the E-Myth is about?
It's a quick read. I mean, it just basically breaks it into talking about people and money and patients and all kinds of different things, and just kind of where the potential traps are, where the potential pitfalls are, what's hanging up most practices, and then how you can address it. And addressing it's not always easy, but at least you know what the problem is, and you know.
So the way I see that book is it was so obvious because my dad was in the restaurants. He had Sonic drive-ins, and Sonic State franchises had a franchisee. Well, everybody want to know, why do the franchises have like a 95% success rate and the mom and pop businesses 20 to 40% of restaurants they fail the first year? And it just came down to, it's very simple. When you own a restaurant, all the hours of the day are serving the customers. You're seating them, taking their order, cooking their food. You're doing all that. You're always working in the business. But if you have a franchisee that doesn't have customers, they're working on the business. So McDonald's had a headquarter, and they're trying to figure out all the details of running a business. Like I remember Ray Kroc, when for a dozen McDonald's in a row, they would go in there and just lay the slab. and have the architects come in, chalk everything out, and then get all the employees from 10 other restaurants to come circle around this parking lot and say, hey, what's working? And some girls say, well, every time I make a malt, I turn around to put on a tray, and then David knocks me down, and so they're all looking at this stuff, and it's all operational logistics.
Ray Kroc didn't franchise a restaurant. Ray Kroc franchised a system, and it was exactly the same everywhere it was done. The system, they put a ton of work into the system, creating it to be almost foolproof. And all you do is you go in and you operate their system, and it's a success.
And by the way, for you young Generation Zers who are all outraged at how unhealthy the food is, go back to bed. I mean, when we were a little kid, it was a big event if you had the money where your mom with 7 kids could take you to McDonald's.
Okay, let's translate it for them.
Thing in the world.
Zoe's Kitchen. Healthy food, fresh food, same thing.
Yeah.
They've created a system. Every Zoe's you walk into across the country is going to be identical, and the food is always consistent, and the system is always working because it's all spelled out before a franchisee walks in.
And Southwest Airlines is the only airline where every plane is identical the same.
Yep.
And then you walk in every dental office in America, every single one of them, except for possibly Mark Costa's office, who's the master of this. And you go into any optory, any drawer is the same. But you go in a dental office and a dentist is doing a filling. How would you like to be having brain surgery done on you? And every 15 minutes, the assistant's got to run out of the room to go find something that's done on. And my gosh, you even go in for a hygiene check. Hey, can you do that little filling there? It's only a buccal pit on number 30. It shouldn't take 5 minutes. No, this room doesn't have a drill. Yeah, we're a dental office. We're a dental office. And guess what room 1 doesn't have? A flipping drill in a dental office. It's just crazy. And if you go in there and make every single room a 737 and the same day treatment is the highest way to get your treatment plan acceptance rate is. When I tell you got a cavity, you want to do it right now? You're here. You're right here in my office. You want to do it right now? That's the highest deal. But when you say, nah, we can't, you got to come back tomorrow and you're like, well, it only take 5 minutes. Well, I'd have to move you to another room because this 737 doesn't have any wings, and I can't put you in that room because the 737 doesn't have any wheels, and this one doesn't have any gas. And it's like, dude, it's all about operational logistics. So let's go back to we're dentists. So prevention is worth a pound of cure. How do you build an effective, compliant financial policy? You just have one I can cut and paste?
No, I do give them a sample of what I consider to be a good one. I've made it as generic as possible, but I will walk them through all of the elements that need to be in a financial policy and a bunch of the elements that shouldn't be in a financial policy. And we just walk through step by step where we'll work through a worksheet where I'll say, okay, what types of payment do you accept? Which credit cards? Those kinds of things. They write it down. Which insurances are you in network with? If you're in network, which insurances are you out of network with? Write it down. All of those become building blocks in putting together the financial policy. If they want me to actually complete it for them, make it look pretty and put their logo and everything on it, I can do that too, but they can do that themselves. I see all kinds of stuff. And one of the things that I find in almost every insurance policy, in almost every financial policy, is some kind of a statement that says the patient agrees that if they don't pay their bill, they are responsible for all collection costs on the. That is not legal.
Really?
That's not legal. You can't put that in there. Also, you should have and the reason is, and tax court or the courts have determined that if you're paying a collection agency 50%, you cannot add that on top of the bill so that your collection cost is nothing. First of all, the math doesn't work out anyway. If I owe you $1,000 and you turn it over to a collection agency who charges you 50%, And so you add $500 on top of the bill, and I pay it, which is not likely to happen. If I can't pay $1,000, I'm not going to be able to pay $1,500. But if I did, you still give them 50%, and all you get is $750. So the math doesn't work out. But that, according to the U.S. government, is usury, which is charging an illegally high interest rate. And you can't prove that that is the actual cost of collections. Now, it's the cost of collections to you, but that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for the actual cost to collect the money. You cannot add a percentage on top. The only legal thing that you can do in your financial policy is to say, if this account goes to collections, there will be a collection fee added to the balance of X number of dollars. But don't make it too high, because too high is usury. Now, how high is too high? Nobody knows.
And this has deep religious roots, because all through the Christian Europe for 2,000 years, they didn't like interest, banking, financing, and it was an illegal trade for the most part. And then Islam came along in a big way where they just spelled it out. They don't like interest, banking. So it's always been kind of a like drug dealing or prostitution or banking. Has the first 2,000 years of banking was kind of like in the alley. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was not a noble profession.
Well, who was the most hated person in the Bible was the tax collector, right? So same idea, you know, because they were always skimming off the top and taking extra money and that sort of thing. So
and Jesus knocking over the money changers and those guys, and those are in every airport, because the money changers were the what do you call that, the currency what's a currency?
Currency exchange.
Yeah, a currency exchange. I mean, people are coming in from all over Egypt and the Mediterranean basin, and they didn't like that. So your dental services, you do. We've been talking a lot about patient account receivable management. You do merchant funding. You do insurance.
Well, I'll tell you one of the other big ones. What I look at first are their biggest assets. So we start with the accounts receivable. Second thing for a lot of dentists,
and when they call you and their biggest concern is account receivables, how big is the problem? I mean, is it 1 month, 2 months, 3 months? What is it?
I've seen from minor little tweaks that are necessary all the way up to Katie, bar the door, the place is burning down, you know.
And what does that usually mean? Like 3 months AR?
4, 5, 6 months.
4 or 5 or 6
yeah,
months.
it can get crazy before somebody actually realizes. I sit down with the office manager and the doctor when we first start, and I ask them to print a copy of their aging report. In the vast majority of cases, the doctor has never seen the aging report or hasn't seen it in a long, long time.
I know. And he just got back from the Chicago Midwinter meeting, and he ran 30 red lights because they have a new laser they're selling for $150,000 that does
But that's what turns them on, you know. So my point is, I'm going to see where the pain is, and I'm going to point it out so that everybody realizes, okay, this is an issue we need to address, and I can generally tell by looking at the aging.
I want to get your feedback on this, because you've been looking at this industry for 30,000 feet for 30 years. You're almost. You must be an old man. I mean,
I'm older than you.
Oh my God, are you? Well, at least you're alive. we got something going. But a lot of my friends that are well-run business with a big account receivable problems are in the state of Illinois, who is sometimes takes a year to pay on dental.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's kind of bizarre, because, you know, been talking about HIPAA and usury fees. So they make all these laws about usury. They make all these laws about HIPAA and OSHA and all this stuff. And then when the healthcare system's broke, they're out there on the political stands blaming it on doctors.
Of course.
And the solution is going to come from the government that broke it. They're like, after we broke it for 50 years, it's time that we just take it over because you're so broken. I mean, does that, I know that that's a political hot dog question, but is that the way you see it, or?
Careful with the hot dog stuff. With the last name Wiener,
Oh,
I take that personally.
I'm sorry. Well, I'll call you Mr. Wanker. Mr. Wanker. So doesn't it sound kind of absurd that
It is absurd.
I mean, what do you think of Medicare for all then?
I'm opposed to it with every atom in my body.
And it's so, and I love the fact that the young dentists and dental schools are passionate. Like, well, this is a really good thing because their heart's in the right place. I know their heart's in the right place. You chose to be a dentist. You chose to work with your hands doing surgery on people in pain. You're a good person.
I'm not crazy about Medicare
but
for
you're not
me.
you're not a good economist.
Medicare is coming for me shortly. I'm not real happy about Medicare for me, let alone Medicare for all. If you look through the history of this country, the government's not real good at running things.
They're good at killing people. They kill 6% of the population in the last 5,000 years.
But they're not real good at running things. And I think we need to do some work in healthcare. We need to get those things taken care of. Turning it over lock, stock, and barrel to them and making a single provider system is crazier than most of the stuff I deal with every year.
Yeah. My focus is when you have grandchildren. You have any grandchildren yet?
I do.
How many?
4, 5, 6.
Wow, my God. Is your wife's name Fertile Myrtle?
Yeah.
She's
well, I am remarried. My first wife passed away. So I have 4 natural grandchildren and 2 step grandchildren who are my grandkids anyway.
You know what I call that? I used to, when I was a young new grandfather, used to always thought I should be explaining the situation. And I thought, screw it, it's Modern Family.
I love them.
I mean,
I love them like any of them.
I mean,
so
I got grandkids coming and go. I don't know how some of them are even my grandkids, but they're my grandkids. If they call you grandpa,
oh yeah,
it's your grandkid.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what you think.
But I think too, one big area that I address with doctors is their second biggest asset is often their building. If they own their own building, there are ways to save on their taxes. People gloss by that and say that I do cost segregation, and they don't really know what that means. Basically, what we can do is help them defer large portions of their taxes through their building. And it's funny because a cost segregation study, I don't know how familiar you are with the concept.
I know my homies don't know that. So
I'll make it real simple. You referred to the Big Mac as 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed
cheese,
bun.
lettuce, onion, pickle. No.
We're belying our age remembering that commercial, but that's a good way to look at it. When somebody buys or builds a building, there's 2 ways of handling it. One is as a Big Mac, which means that building or even leasehold improvements are depreciated 39 years straight line. It's the easiest way to do it. And most CPAs do it that way. So let's say you have
which is cash versus accrual. That's another thing they get hung up on.
You can depreciate 1/39th of that building every year and take it as a tax deduction, which is great. But the IRS says you don't have to do it that way. By using an engineering-based cost segregation study, we turn that Big Mac into 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. And a lot of those, everything non-structural in the building can be depreciated at 5, 7, and 15 years. Well, thanks to the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, at least for the next couple of years, all of that 5, 7, and 15-year property can be depreciated 100% the first year. Well, you speed up your depreciation, so now for some of the property, you're taking 1/5 of it every year, so you get a much bigger tax deduction. If you take all of that, what we call bonus depreciation, take all of that stuff the first year, you get an incredibly large tax deduction. And some people have said to me, yeah, but I'm going to get it over the next 39 years anyway. Well, if I'm going to give you $1 million, do you want me to give it to you in 39 chunks over the next 39 years, or do you want me to give it all to you today?
And here's what I want the young kids to realize. When you're in dental school, when you're a grandma, what you will realize is that the United States has 1 million physicians and it has 1 million attorneys. And the 1 million attorneys come up with all this cockamamie bullshit where the U.S. tax code is 60,000 pages, and the best tax attorney in Phoenix, Arizona that I use, no one's ever read that entire code. And this is the endless bullshit that we have to put up with. And that $1 trillion cost is how much you run short every year. So your $19 trillion deficit, you're coming up about $1 trillion short a year. It's not only all with your 1 million attorneys, they're the ones that grind the wheels of the economy down to when I got out of high school to today. You've only grown this economy about 2.5%, 3% for 40 years, and you've shipped out 50 million jobs where they can avoid all this bullshit, all this OSHA, all this HIPAA, all this everything. And I personally do not think you will learn the lesson. I personally think just like Portugal handed it over to Spain, Spain handed the empire over to England, England handed the United States, and you are just delivering it to China on golden chariots, because it's that's just what you'll do. You won't fix a problem. So my question to you is, when you're dealing with dentists and physicians, is that usually the same beast, or are there nuances, or are they a different animal?
It's very similar. Very similar. I mean, there are some nuances, but mostly they've got the same problems. The practices run very similarly, that sort of thing. But this cost segregation, even the CPAs don't totally understand it.
Yeah.
My dad was a CPA.
They want you to not. And one more thing, when you look at any political science deal, crime deal, it's always about transparency. I don't know. I've told Ryan this before, but when I was raising 4 boys, if they ever ran into one room and shut the door, you knew something's going down. I mean, why would they all go in one room and need to shut the door to become opaque to me and their mother? So the lawyers, 99% of all lawsuits are settled out of court. Well, why do you think that is? Because what if I represented a church and my client raped your child, and so I give you hush money, and you don't want that to be transparent, but then that guy goes on and does it 40 more times? Do they ever go back to Boston and say, hey, Mr. Attorney, you've been living like a multimillionaire while your criminal accuser keeps doing this, and these boys end up killing themselves, drug addicts, alcoholism. And the fact that the entire legal profession is 99% opaque shows you the bullshit that they are. And you just go along with it and go along with it. And what have they done? The lawyers, all your congressmen, what is the number one occupation of all of Congress since day one? Lawyers. So the lawyers sit there and they own they're the politicians, and they butt up with the politicians to pass all these laws to shake down the businessman for money. Another one is the marriage institution. I mean, it started off as property rights. Now it's just a property shakedown. They got all these laws with the government. Oh, you divorced? Well, if you would have paid her for sex, we'd put you in a cage. But you guys did love, but now you broke up, so now give us a bunch of money. And I look at so many dentists, when you look at their cash flow and you look at their numbers, it's like, dude, they're paying $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month alimony. And it's like, that is, it's just, and then, so when young people run to the government like it's their mom to help them, oh, we have a problem, come help us. It's like, no, they're the problem. I mean, when you tell me the government is the solution, you're not even smart enough to understand that they created the entire problem for the last 5,000 years.
Yeah. Well, so we have to be creative and come up with the ways to solve those problems ourselves.
Yeah.
I have a client who's a dentist, just purchased a building to move his practice into. He's been leasing, and he just bought a building and renovated it. I was able to save the guy $60,000 off of his taxes this year by doing a study for him. Study didn't cost him close to 10. My poster child, not in the medical space, but I had somebody who built a warehouse, large warehouse, owns a chain of stores, just basically to store all of his stuff. His CPA called me and said, I don't know if this would be a good thing for him, but can you check the numbers out? and I can run a free estimate on any building for anybody to see if it's worth doing. The study wound up costing this guy $15,000, and we gave him an additional $3.2 million of tax deductions this year, $2.3 million of tax deductions this year. So
in your experience, I'm just wondering, you got 3 decades in this. Now DSOs are coming out, and their only advantage is that my guy, the owner-operated independent guy, he's just trying to figure out root canals, fillings, and crowns. He can't figure out his cash flow and marketing and all these things like that. Do you think the DSO, do you think dentistry is going to follow Walgreens, where when you and I were little, every pharmacist owned their own land and building, just like the dentist, and now they all are employees at Walgreens or CVS? Or do you think
it sure does appear that way? And got a lot of friends in the DSO industry, so don't want to take them off either. But I am a crusader for independent practices.
But why though?
You get to make your own decisions. And this all kind of started in the medical world, where doctors were all selling out to the hospitals. Not always a good idea. You like to just practice medicine, but give you an example.
Well, their burnout went through the roofs. It's all over the New York Times, and there's all kinds of.
Yeah, I'll give you an example out of the medical world. I had a doctor who was a client of mine. We worked together. He came to me one day and said, "I'm thinking about selling to the hospital." And I said, "Oh, don't, please don't." And so we talked, and he wound up selling to the hospital, became an employee. They put all kinds of quotas on him that he could not meet. He was an OBGYN, couldn't meet the quotas. They fired him. He had such a bulletproof non-compete clause, he had to wind up moving out of state to go back into private practice himself. It all looks rosy from the beginning, but there are ways to help you manage your practice where you can still be your own business person. You can still run your own practice. You can make your own decisions, do those kinds of things, and not be simply somebody's employee.
And here's another outrage on that. When you talk about your what you're doing with the cost segregation services, what do you call that? The cost segregation services incorporated. The problem with that is, look how absurd this is. When it's tax time, you call the government. Hey, it's tax time. How much I owe you? I don't know. But if you get it wrong, we're going to kidnap you and put you in a cage and put liens on all your property. And they're just like, oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Government. And it's like, hopefully Quicken, that owns TurboTax Charge, and now they own, now they bought this new finance deal. It would really help on cash flow is if you paid your taxes monthly, because my homies, they'll go get a job for a dentist and he'll pay him as an independent contractor, which is in violation of all rules, because an independent contractor is someone like, I'm building a house, I know nothing about plumbing, and I'm having your plumbing service come in and put all the plumbing in, which I can't do myself. But no, you're going into a dental office using all their dental equipment, doing procedures that all these other people do, and you're not. But anyways, but they just do it because of the FICA matching. So the Social Security tax FICA matching is 7.5%, but the employer has to match that. So to save the match, they say you're an independent contractor. Then my buddy, he comes out of school, he gets a paycheck every month, doesn't even know, and now his CPA is telling him in March, oh, you need to write a check for 40 grand. He's like, 40 grand? I don't have $40.
Yeah, and they're tightening the rules down on independent contractors, because basically that's what I do with a lot of these companies that I'm affiliated with. I'm an independent contractor, or my company is an independent contractor with them. But they're really tightening down the rules. And there's a lot of restrictions where the government's going to be coming down on these people who are hiring these independent contractors, because you can't specify what their job duties are exactly. You can't specify the hours that they work. You can't specify a lot of things, or they don't qualify as an independent contractor. And they're starting to catch up with some of these that are being wrongly classified as an independent contractor. I'm happy to be an independent contractor because I make my own way.
But see, you are an independent contractor. If you come into a dental office, you're not coming in here to do a root canal, a cleaning, an exam. You're doing a whole nother specialty that this guy doesn't know about.
I'm an independent contractor with Transworld Systems.
Yeah.
And that's my affiliation with the company. They understand sales, but they're not telling me how to do it. They're not telling me how many I have to...
Last question, we got to go because I know you're busy. And last but not least, you posted about collection letters, and what are your any thoughts about that?
Oh, well, collection letters don't really, when it's done in the name of the practice, usually those aren't going out until very late, 90 days or beyond. They're not doing any good. There's no leverage at that point. They understand you're after their money. You could come to their house and dance for them, and they're not going to pay you after they've ignored you so many times. There was a study done not too long ago that over 80% of patients never open the envelope after the second one.
Yeah.
Because they recognize it. It either gets thrown in the envelope on the desk or it gets thrown in the envelope in the trash. What's necessary at some point, sooner rather than later, is that third-party impact that you need of a collection agency, because it makes a whole lot more of an impression when they get a letter from a collection agency than when they get a letter from the practice. Oh, another one, And so there are better ways to do it. And you don't want to be chasing money for that long to have to start sending, I remember that post, to start sending a series of collection letters. And what I run into a lot of times when I'm speaking to practices, and I do it more just teasing, but I say, how many of you still put stickers on your bills? Colored stickers when stuff is past due. And you wouldn't believe how many people are still doing them. I tried that. It doesn't work. Nobody's paying. It's like, ooh, a red sticker this time. Ooh, a yellow sticker this time. It doesn't motivate them to pay you in any way.
So, my gosh, we went 15 minutes over. This has been so informative. Your website, cashflowstrategies.us. How much is it? It's a free consultation if they call you?
Yes.
And there is no money exchanged between me and you.
Nope.
This is not a commercial.
Nope.
You're supposed to put a donut in the box so when you walk in.
We'll work on that.
Cherry-filled donut. Thank you so much for coming by. And,
absolutely my pleasure.
And like I say, I'm trying to be a leader, and you don't have to lead my homies into cosmetic dentistry or implants or Invisalign. That's all they dream about. But man, trying to get them to think about their cash flow, tough. Ask me how I know. I've been trying to get them to do it for 32 years. But thanks for coming in and helping me.
Sometimes I like beating my head against the wall. Right?
All right. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.